All right, folks. I appreciate the hardcore open source enthusiasts that stayed to the very end of Open Source Summit North America.
I also do.
So give yourselves a round of applause. Good job, all of you. Thank you for coming and staying. We're going to try to have a lighthearted yet educational view in some real world problems that you all may or may not be experiencing every day.
Hopefully not every day.
Hopefully not every day. It's not my dream, but hopefully not. We are about to unfold what is called a cybersecurity tabletop exercise. I have an amazing group of, there's no table, I know, I'm sorry. The table's in the back. I'll actually talk about what that means in a minute. But I have an amazing, power-packed group of open source contributors and participants. And everybody's portraying a particular role that you'll typically see inside a cybersecurity incident. So I'd like to invite my panelists to briefly just introduce themselves and talk about the role they're portraying. I'll start off with my dear friend Yesenia.
Oh, sweet. I got an upgrade. I'm a CISO.
Right.
Does it come with a paycheck?
Absolutely. I pay it in free software, though.
Oh. Like free like puppy?
As in puppies. Yeah.
Like puppies.
I guess that's my role.
Just briefly introduce yourself. You're Yessie, and what do you do?
Oh, like real life?
Real life, and then
okay.
talk about what a CISO does.
No idea what a CISO does. I guess that's what I do. That's why I'm a CISO. Yesenia said 12 years in cybersecurity. I'm a Jacqueline of all cyber, master of none. I just explore and just wherever the shiny object goes is where I go. I'm the co-host of the What's in the Sauce.
Oh, ghost.
So if you are interested in making random noises with me as we talk about your journey in open source software or other cool important topics, let us know. I'm also the co-lead for the BEAR working group, so that's belonging, empowerment, BEAR, allyship, and
I never remember the R.
Representation. I was your mistress of chaos. I'm completely burnt out, so we're seeing my ADD just off the roof right now, so it's fantastic. Seth. Yeah, I don't know what she said. I'm also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor, and I have 5 servant puppies. Not puppies, fur babies. I don't know what else.
Nice. That's great. And what we're seeing is our panelists are going to represent different personas that are involved in a cybersecurity incident. Several of them represent corporate entities, folks that actually ingest and potentially sell products that include open source solutions. And somebody who gets to do that all day and all night is my friend Megan, who's representing our OSPO persona, who works with Yessie.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, that's it. So hi, I'm Megan. Thank you for staying for this. It's going to be a riot. I work at ARM. I am the director of software communities there, and I lead our OSPO and AI office efforts. I also sit on the Yocto project board, UXL Foundation board, and the Zephyr project board, and I run a working group for OpenSSF related to global cyber policy. So if you love things CRA, shameless plug, please come hang out with us on the internet. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. Now, another person that's involved in this event is our poor single maintainer who works upstream tirelessly day and night, my friend Mihai.
Hello everyone, that actually matches the role. So I'm working on Google Open Source Security team on supply chain security, AI supply chain security, and in my day-to-day life, I'm also interested in AI, in security, math, Haskell, physics, so any of those sound interesting, please talk to me.
Excellent, thank you. Another person that generally how these issues are found is you'll have somebody that is a security researcher, which we sometimes call finders, and the person that's representing this role, the curious researcher, is our friend Seth.
Hey everyone, I'm Seth Larson. I work at the Python Software Foundation as a security developer. I also maintain a few open source projects related to web and security in the Python space.
Excellent. And unsurprisingly, the final part of our panel, the generally quiet party in CVD, and representing the downstream actual end user customer is our friend John.
Hello, I'm John, principal consultant at ControlPlane, do all kinds of cloud-native security-related things. In CNCF, I'm a maintainer for the Witness and Archivista projects, which are under Intoto, and also part of the Update Framework Tough project, and a few different things in OpenSSF as well, too. So I've never had, well, I guess I have the appropriate amount of money to buy open source, so I can represent a good customer here.
Excellent. So before we get into the actual fun, I have some blah, blah, blah context for you. We're going to go through the structure of incident response. We're going to talk about the scenario. We've already got a sneak peek at the organization and some of the players. I'm going to present the scenario. We're going to go through a series of injects. An inject is a change to the scenario, something that happens that the panel needs to react to. And then we'll do a wrap-up and lessons learned. So we intend this to be very energetic, engaging. I would like to see audience participation. I'm going to ask all of you questions, and I would love for you to ask our panelists some questions, perhaps. Don't ask me questions because I don't do anything and I don't know anything.
I got to start trying that line.
Ah, you see right here, that's why that is there. I read and write, I don't do anything. All right, so what is a tabletop exercise? Has anyone here worked in any kind of enterprise or organization where you've participated in a cybersecurity tabletop exercise? Oh, that's more than I had expected. That's excellent. So this will be real quick. A tabletop exercise is also referred to sometimes as a mock disaster, and this is part of readiness and preparedness training that an organization goes through, because you don't want to be figuring out how to react to a cybersecurity incident while you're in the middle of that cybersecurity incident. These things will typically draw in assorted players from across the organization. Normally they'll be different departments, but they'll bring these players in, and these folks will have their processes, they'll have their call trees, they'll have a bunch of information, and then the moderator will spring a scenario upon them, and they'll also give them injects, and the organization will go through and kind of make sure that they're prepared, they're doing the right things, they have the right internal organizational processes and connectivity so that ultimately you get through the event and everybody's happy and the company still survives. But again, this is all kind of theater of the mind. It's role playing. It's a little play, so to speak. And again, this is all around, this is part of the disciplines of business continuity and disaster recovery, sometimes also referred to as business resiliency. So why do you care about incidents? There's a lot of facts that my friends from across the ecosystem have laid out. So as a for example, if you work at a large corporation, our friends at IBM cited that in 2024, the average cost of a cybersecurity data breach was almost $5 million. Everybody have $5 million? I know John doesn't, but everybody aside from John have $5 million that you could pay if there's some type of breach? Probably not. The mean time it took defenders, oops, wrong button, CRob. The mean time it took defenders to kind of identify and then contain a breach was 259 days. Almost, two-thirds of a year that it took from the time the incident happened till they were finally able to basically bring the organization back to whole. That's a very long time. And this is why organizations will do tabletop exercises. Because again, if you don't ever do something, you kind of lose that muscle memory, you forget those connections, you forget the processes. So that's why we train. That's why sports teams practice. That's why musicians practice. We want to do this so that when the actual thing happens and the building's on fire, we can react quickly. Generally, my friends at Verizon report that the top 4 causes of breaches are stolen, misused credentials, phishing and ransomware, human error, and then 15% of the time, it's a vulnerability exploit. So again, not a vast minority, but certainly a minority compared to the other categories of the time that something happens is because of a CVE, because somebody has they made a mistake in their product, or they have a dependency from upstream or another supplier that's broken. So again, that's not the most common type of thing that happens. This one scared the hell out of me. CrowdStrike said the average time that an attacker breaks out, gets in your network and then breaks out and starts moving laterally, average time, 48 minutes. The fastest they recorded was 51 seconds. Is your organization prepared? And again, most of this is focused towards manufacturers, enterprises, banks, hospitals, retailers. Upstream doesn't necessarily have the same kind of attack threat profile here, but very similar things. While again, the attackers, the bad guys, are trying to harvest credentials, get money, get access to resources, these kinds of attacks very definitely are in scope for upstream. So why does security matter? So security helps protect against identity theft. It protects private data. If you're in a corporate environment, you care about trade secrets. You don't want your competitors to know the recipe for Coca-Cola or the Colonel's 7 herbs and spices, right? You care about company reputation. You don't want your company on the headline news. You don't want to be used to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or Forbes. That's not quite as relevant today. You don't want to be on Hacker News or ZDNet that your company got popped, or the Register. LReg. When I retire, I want to go write headlines for LReg. You want to make sure that financial transactions are guaranteed and authentic. You want to make sure business continuity is important. So you think about natural disasters. We had Hurricane Katrina, the Japanese tsunami of 2011, things like September 11th, 2001. These are events. I know many friends that worked in organizations that were in the trade towers, and several companies ceased to exist because they did not think about business resiliency. They had all their assets in one place. So again, tabletop exercises, mock disasters help you plan for that and kind of identify. It's like threat modeling for the business. And it helps you identify these things, and you say, oh, I would not like to have all my servers in one site that frequently has earthquakes or is next to a volcano. And there are dozens of we could spend all day kind of talking about why we want to protect the business, why we want to protect customer data. Our friend Brian Krebs, with his giant hand reaching out to you, says that you are the target. A lot of different reasons. Threat actors have a lot of different motivations, kind of like upstream open source developers. A lot of these people are curious. Sometimes they're motivated by political means. They're hacktivists. Sometimes there's very definitely cybercrime. They're trying to either extort people, blackmail people, or exfiltrate data or information. Many, many, many different reasons, and I would recommend checking out Krebs on Security, and you can actually read this picture. There is a methodology that's sometimes used. It's called Pickerel. This is very common in incident response, and it kind of lays out the stages of an incident. Your first stage of an incident is like what we're doing today. This is preparation. We're going through, we're understanding, who the players are involved. Who's not in the room is also important, so we need to make sure that they get included in future things. You're collecting documentation, you're preparing so that when the incident happens, the team knows what to do and you're not standing around staring at each other, gape-mouthed. The next stage of the incident is identify. You're determining that we actually have a problem. Something happened, we need to take action, and then we kind of ring the bell. And one thing this isn't germane to open source maintainers, but for corporate entities, in the identification stage, it's absolutely critical that you decide you have 2 paths to go down. You can either make the pain go away immediately. That is a different set of actions than the second path if you are concerned about prosecution. If you go down the prosecution path, you have very different steps you have to take. You're looking at preservation of evidence, chain of custody, forensic analysis. Whereas when you're eradicating things, you're ripping wires out of servers, you're turning services off, you are re-imaging things or respinning containers. Very different. So again, the organization has to decide what is my path I want to go down? Because if you can't decide, you start out eradicating, and then you want to flip over to prosecution, you have destroyed evidence potentially. So you've eliminated the end goal of that particular path. Next up, after we kind of identified the problem and we've decided which path we want to go down, you move to contain it. You want to stop the problem from getting worse, and you want to establish interim and long-term stoppage plans. A lot of times in incidents, these things will move across the LAN, and it takes a while to figure out what's going on. So it's like a game of whack-a-mole. You'll see indications of compromise in one location, you'll go over and get rid of that, and then it'll typically pop up somewhere else on the network. And until you are able to identify this, it's important to have tactics in place. So things like network segmentation, firewalls, access control, things like that, that you can turn things off and on very quickly. Next up, now that we've contained the problem, we want to get rid of it. We're going to eradicate it. We want to get the attacker off the system. You're cleaning up the mess. Then we recover. A lot of times in this eradication phase, you've disabled systems, you've turned systems off. Well, now, again, the business has stopped functioning on some level. So now we need to make sure that we're able to get things back into place and be able to service customers and continue the business operations. And then finally, the last stage is lessons learned, which is a little bit here. Like, again, we're talking about this incident we're going to go through is informed by an actual real-world incident that I helped. I wasn't the incident commander, but I participated in. So we will talk through this and learn from it and plan. And ideally, if you're in an enterprise, you update your documentation, you update your tooling, you update your processes so that that particular problem ideally doesn't come bite you in the rear in the future. All right, here's our pretend organization. Now we're getting into it. My friend Mihai is an upstream open source maintainer of the Fluffernutter project. It's an awesome little widget that delivers a lot of value. It solved a complex problem that he had. And then our friends Yesenia and Megan, who work at Large Co., saw Fluffernutter, and they have integrated that into their Uber Drive product. So they get a lot of value out of this free package they didn't pay a dime for, and they don't necessarily have a relationship with, but that is kind of core to the operations of their Uber Drive product. So Yesenia is in charge of cybersecurity for Large Co., and our friend Megan leads the OSPO. Our friend John is a downstream customer of Large Co. He has purchased the value plan of Uber Drive. It's the lowest tier, has the least amount of features, but does include the Fluffernutter package. And then we have Seth, who's a curious security researcher. He's an explorer of the internet, and he has come across a problem. Now, in an incident, these will not be the only people ever involved. There's generally a whole cast of other characters. You know, you could have folks, you could have other project, you could have coordinators like CertCC or JP Cert or ENISA over in Europe. You can have regulators. Oh, those are fun people to get involved in an incident, believe me. You'll have other open source projects. You'll have potentially foundations, you know, folks like the OpenSSF or Apache or whomever that also potentially could get pulled in and help for coordination. You'll have folks that directly work with product security. You could have the government. They're always really awesome folks to talk with. You could have, you know, folks from a source code repository like GitHub or GitLab. You could have other responsible researchers. And what's interesting is depending on the prevalence of the particular package, you'll often have researchers working in isolation. They don't work together, but a lot of times they sometimes will find the same problem around the same time. So you'll have other people kind of stepping in. And there are a lot of other people. You need to think about including your legal team, your marketing team, your executive suite. It's critical to have that understanding of, you know, who has the voice, who has the pen for the messaging internally and externally, and you have, you know, where are all the updates reported to and reported out from. So again, there I could probably list off another 25 types of people that you would include in a cyber incident and within a tabletop exercise. All right. Here we go, team. It's day one. It started like a regular day. My friends Megan and Yesenia walk in. They've got their half calf, low calf, soy, chocolate-loco-moco lattes, and they're sitting down and business is just starting. John, our downstream customer, is just trying, he's just working, man. He's just trying to do his thing. Mihai is thinking about all these amazing new features he's going to put into Fluffernuffer. And I would like you all to kind of describe, thinking from a preparation standpoint, and I'll start with Megan and work my way right. During a normal day, when you're not involved in an incident, what are you thinking about cybersecurity incidents from an OSPO perspective?
Oh, sure. I'm thinking about making friends with the people that know what's going on with cybersecurity. So I'm probably having meetings with them pretty frequently, checking in on how things are going with both things we're consuming and things we're producing. Probably talking with our legal folks, our compliance folks, probably just everyone in general. Meetings all day.
Awesome. So Seth, as a researcher, you're very curious. What's a normal day look like for a researcher, maybe?
Yeah, a normal day for a researcher definitely looks like looking at maybe reading the news about what sorts of attacks are happening, what sorts of vulnerabilities are being published, and trying to repurpose that information into a new domain to try to see if I can find some novel vulnerabilities, potentially in Fluffernutter. Who knows? Maybe it's going to come across my eye soon, but who knows?
Oh, no. So, Yessie, as the Chief Security Officer, what's a day in the life look like for you? What do you think about around in regards to incident response?
I just try to avoid being arrested.
Oh, it's not looking good. You're at a table conversation. It's not looking good.
You just gotta go ahead and look at all the risks that's going around, make sure, we take some bonuses from people that aren't filling out their security requirements. I'm kidding.
So,
I'm not being serious.
fun, actual world fact. When I was in the bank, as I would talk to the business, I said, I am your orange jumpsuit and handcuff insurance. And that is exactly the right statement.
Yeah. So, looking at the next threat, not sleeping at night, looking for that log4j and XZ in our pipeline, and lots of salespeople trying to sell me their buzzword software.
I hear there's some AI that'll help you.
Oh, they're all these AIs and the agents, and you gotta figure out which one's which.
So, John, from just a normal customer perspective, what do you think about incident response on the daily?
I don't.
Right. So when you bought the lowest tier Uber Drive plan, what were you thinking about when you were buying this?
I was thinking I don't want to buy this software at all. I just want to run my business and deliver value to my own customers because my value has nothing to do with all the software I purchase.
There you go. And then last but absolutely not least, our friend Mihai, who's toiling away upstream, all alone, on the daily. What do upstream maintainers think about, or what are they doing around incident response?
Most likely nothing, because they're also overworked and they have their own priorities in the project. But maybe if I get some time in between waiting for CI to run or waiting for some deployment, maybe I'll go on social media and maybe I happen to see some incident notification. But most likely, I'm also not thinking about it.
So again, this is a normal day, and you all can kind of reflect on your normal days. Does anyone here think about incident response as part of their core responsibilities, or even does it even mentor your, well, Tara doesn't count, because that's your job. Yeah, so there's a couple of us that were thinking about this, but broadly, that's not a topic that people are really thinking about. But then, ripped from the headlines, what's going to happen and what we're going to describe over the next series of injects is there's a critical vulnerability that's introduced into Mihai's open source package via a compromise in his CI/CD infrastructure. And unfortunately, this issue evades detection from the project, and he will produce artifacts that make its way into production systems and enterprises like the amazing Fluffernutter package. It was in the Fluffernutter package, and it ends up in Uber Drive, and begins to be used by enterprises like John. So here's our first inject, and here's where you all are going to earn that amazing paycheck I paid you. All right, timeline day one, and reflecting back to our friend Pickerel, we're at the identification stage. The trigger is open source project's CI pipeline publishes a new release. Hours later, automated analysis flags the release for containing obfuscated code not present in recent commits. So I'm going to talk first to Mihai. As the maintainer, what controls do you have in place, or what controls should you would like to have in place around your CI system?
So ideally, I would have like something to guarantee that what I'm building actually comes from the source. So SALSA attestations, trusted publishing. But if I'm like an average, if I'm the common developer for a single open source project, or I'm the only maintainer and the project starts being used by other companies, most likely I don't know about this, and I'll need to get it documented after an incident happens. In general, that's usually what happens when I find out about these nifty tools. So.
Oh no, I have a question from the audience, totally unplanned. Oh, we're good. Okay.
Mihai, so we have a problem. My organization, just as large show here, we are users of Fluffernutter, and our super expensive security scanners started picking up all sorts of vulnerabilities coming from your project. So can you please fix them today, if possible? Because like mine not saying fluffing anymore, so please.
So in your experience, Mihai, has that ever happened to you? Has another project or organization approached an upstream project about a problem?
I could see that happening. I could probably respond. I could probably respond later in the day saying, oh, sorry, I didn't see this issue so far, but I have to prioritize it. There are so many other issues in this repo, and I'm just one person, so helps PR is welcome.
So, Megan, from an OSPO perspective, you're not aware of anything happening.
Oh, no.
But as a part of a regular day, what are some strategies you could recommend that OSPOs might want to adopt to be monitoring or thinking about in order to be able to capture problems upstream?
Sure. Well, first, it makes me really sad that we don't have a relationship with Mihai and the Fluffernutter project, so I'd probably start there and build a relationship with you. Fix that first. That'd probably be really great, because then we can work together on stuff as it comes up. And you're not alone, right? That'd be super cool. All right, excellent. And then we'd probably look for some sort of scanning tools internally, probably get some logs going, check those out, probably, work with product security to identify the biggest risks in terms of consumption and keep an eye on those.
Excellent. I'd like to turn my attention now to our friend Seth, the curious explorer. From your perspective, how would you detect these types of anomalies? And would you find something like this interesting? You find a problem?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways you could detect this. I've seen multiple data sets about packages that have differences from what their upstream source is, and so that's one method you could use to detect whether there's like a diff that's not accounted for in the source code. And another method was actually like a talk earlier, which was about malicious behavior or strange behavior with regards to CI/CD workflows, where you're seeing things like weird triggers or triggers that are not coming from the right source, and they're having some impact on the release workflow. So we saw a talk about that earlier today. So maybe I went to OpenSSF Community Day and learned about that.
I hope so.
Yeah, and then I got home and I started looking at that data set myself and was like, wow, I'm seeing this.
You're so curious, Seth.
Extremely curious.
So Yesenia, you have a board presentation coming up. You're unaware of any problems. You've not been notified yet. Kind of what's on your mind about thinking about upstream open source?
So for the board meeting? I think just talking through.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Talking through maybe the latest security controls and things we're pushing in, how we're identifying and how great our metrics are. The fact that it's been 6 days since our last incident. Just completely unaware until I check my email to find angry customers and social media marketings of, what is it? Fluffer
Fluffernutter.
Fluffernutter Overdrive being tagged at the company.
Right. So John, being this stalwart downstream user of Large Co's UberDrive product, the value suite, what are you thinking about? Again, you were unaware that there's a component in there. Nothing has been publicly communicated yet. What do you think about open source?
Nothing.
Right. And Mihai, your dear friend Puerco was asking you some questions. Would you like to respond? He's saying like you're breaking his build, and he's a little upset. He wants you to fix the thing.
I just came to the issue that he opened on the project, and I say, I still cannot find time to work on this. Maybe next week when I manage to go through all of the issues. I'm not paid for this. PR's welcome, sorry.
You're breaking us.
So audience, again, does this sound pretty familiar? Have you experienced this in your organizations where something outside of your org happened and now work is slowly starting to filter in? You're getting some signals. Does this happen? I see some snaps over here, some nods. All right. Now, my friend Honk is going to interject throughout this exercise and kind of provide you some perspective from our friends at the OpenSSF, the friendly folks with the goose on their chest. Generally, CI pipeline hardening is critical for projects. This is something we have guidance around, and we encourage all projects, whether you're commercial or unaffiliated upstream, you need to think about how you're going to harden your pipeline, how you're going to manage the access controls, how you're going to manage actions and robots, and protecting against key leakage or data leakage. We encourage the use of provenance attestations, so things like our awesome Salsa project can help you understand the integrity of the components that you're working with. And you also can do things like pre-consumption validation via SBOM tools. Maybe our BOM CTL or ProtoBOM might be able to help you translate some of these SBOMs and get some actionable information. And this inject focuses on the importance of early detection and dependency trust boundaries. These are the concepts that you need to think about and kind of install into your processes, whether you're a project, you're a commercial vendor, or you're somebody downstream, just a user. Now, we're going to move on to the second inject. It's been 2 days. I'll read it off to you, don't worry. The trigger here is the open source project. So Mihai discloses that there was a compromise of his CI credentials, and he notes that malicious actors potentially could have pushed altered packages to NPM. The media coverage starts to spread. LReg and other outlets get word of this, and the vendors start to scramble. So at this point, we're here in the containment and eradicate phase. So, Seth, we'll start with you this time. How do you communicate? You have technical findings, especially like when you're working with non-technical stakeholders.
Yeah, so I try to keep my focus on impacts and likeliness of exploitation, and try to put data out there that makes it so that teams can all take action independently without having to necessarily talk with me a ton, right? So indicators of compromise, things like how can you mitigate this, what are the names of the packages of the software that you should be looking for. That's the kind of stuff that I'd be probably trying to put out. And so executive summary, all the details.
Excellent, that's pretty good. Megan, as an OSPO, the organization is aware there's a problem. You've gotten this, Mihai disclosed something happened. So, how do you engage with upstream projects, and, how do you support these upstream projects?
Okay, yes, thank you for bringing this up, because I'm real sad. I want to give you money and people. It really upset me to know that Large Co is just over here exploiting your amazing software, and here we are turning a profit on our Uber box product here, And so I'm so sorry. And I'd like to get to know you and give you some money.
How's that make you feel, Mihai?
That will be really helpful. It will allow me to work more on the project and prioritize it, and actually work on a fix rather than also having to stress about the day-to-day work.
Yesy, from a CISO perspective, we're aware there's a problem. Looks like you've ingested some packages and potentially provided them to customers. What's going through your mind right now?
So setting up a war room. We'll just start with that. Just go full extreme. Set a war room. Put urgentness on everything. High confidentiality on all our documentations, all our meetings. Bring in folks like Megan. Deny her request for funding because we just
Perfect.
because we just paid for some vendor with fancy words. But we'll grab those 2 or 3 engineers that are already overloaded and add them to the project and be like, okay, drop everything you're doing, even though your project is bringing funding into our company, to go ahead and handle these security issues. So getting into, I'm laughing because it's true. It's true.
You're crushing it.
Okay.
I'm not
No, it's not. I'm not getting paid for it, man. But definitely getting into that war rooms, get into that, figure out what is going on, because it's the first time I've heard about flabbergasser. I'm like, what is this? So I'm like, we have this. Where did this come from? And then trying to figure out what that's doing, figuring out where in our system it is, figure out how long do I have before the cops or the government shows up, and which regulations we might be compromising because of this.
Mm-hmm.
So getting all that details together, figuring out plans to either escape the country or fix it.
Oh no, a totally unplanned question from the audience.
Hello, I'm Lois Lane from the Daily Planet, and I want to know, is this situation under control?
No comment.
From the CISO, I'd like to hear, is your situation under control?
I'm going to refer you to our media press who can answer your questions.
And how certain are you that the situation is under control?
Please reach out to media@largeco.com, and they will be able to assist you. No comments.
Way to go.
John, you are a subscriber to the Daily Planet, and you're reading about some rumblings of this terrible cyber event. You know, what are you thinking? And it's talking about Fluffernutter and Largeco. What are your thoughts?
I don't know what this means. I just want my business to keep running. Cyber what?
Excellent. And Mihai, you know, again, you have disclosed downstream from the project's perspective. How do you coordinate with your stakeholders? Do you know who's using your package, where it might be? Do you care?
So right now I have an issue from Puerco, and I know that the Daily Planet already published something about this, so I'm reaching out to the issue, and I tell people, okay, I'm working on this. I will also like some help from the community because I'm just one maintainer, and maybe I don't know much about security, so people that can also take a look into this, please comment into this, or maybe send me an email and we can coordinate there. But that's what I can do at the moment.
You are the lucky recipient of about 560 issue requests asking for a fix. How does that make you feel?
I will use an LLM to close most of them as duplicate of one.
And Seth, as a researcher, what are your thoughts on coordinating vulnerability disclosure? How do you make sure that you're, I know it's a bad word, but how are you responsibly disclosing this or helping work with the coordination?
Yeah, so I see the request for help and the email address, and I send an email to Mihai, and I say, hey, I found this, and I can help work on this. I've been looking at these sorts of data sets that maybe I can try to backtrack a vulnerability, try to offer up my skills. I don't know anything about the project itself, so I can't help with fixes or anything, but I can help maybe try to figure out what actually happened so that they can get a better idea and be able to tell their customers, users, what actually happened.
Excellent. So, panelists, any other thoughts before I move on? What are you thinking about? What are you concerned about? What are you doing?
Security is really important to
Large co?
Large co.
I feel you meant that. Audience, from your perspective, has this played out to your experiences? Have you seen some random thing happening? It impacts a large company. There's not been a lot of information. Is that a question or comment? Oh, I'm going to race over here. This actually is not planned.
I'm Michael, the Market Surveillance Authority, and I was just wondering if BakeCo was planning on identifying or sending information back up the chain to help solve this problem. Because I do.
Reporting it 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're selling your products in the EU, so obviously you have to know that you're subject to the CRA. Sorry, I didn't include that information initially, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow, CRob.
It's not 2027 yet, so I don't think we really have to, right?
Yes, thank you for your feedback and comments. We are working on it. And any further questions, go to media@somethingco.
Love that. Love that.
Oh, computer fail. Come on. Oh, I got to do it up here. That's terrible, CRob. You guys are making me work for it. I'm getting my steps in. My Tim Apple's going to ding, and I'm going to earn a cocktail in a minute. All right. So our friend Honk steps in. He's got some thoughts around this. It is critical that projects have thought about coordinated vulnerability disclosure processes and procedures. You need to have, at a minimum, some type of security policy that states how the project ingests and takes in vulnerability reports. And you should plan about and think about do you need to do pre-disclosure? Are you part of a very complex ecosystem and you need assistance from other projects or other partners to be able to stage fixes for public disclosure? You understand your stakeholders. And this, again, is not necessarily upstream is going to be doing this, but especially large co. You need to understand your ecosystem, your suppliers, the open source projects that you're using, and you need to understand who needs to be participating in this event. And you need to have, and Yesenia is very jokingly putting this out, but you need to have incident communication protocols put in place. This is not something you want to be writing in the middle of the event because the press will harass large co, they will harass the researcher, they will harass poor Mihai, who's just trying to solve a problem. Downstream vendors, you have to be ready to quickly analyze the blast radius. You have to be able to pull vulnerable artifacts. So is this something you have the capability to pull and release a quick update? Or is Fluffernutter so core to your operation of the Uber drive that it totally disables functionality? So are you shutting poor John totally off when you shut off things? And then you also need to be able to provide customer guidance. And that was, a couple of us touched on this. It's critical to be able to provide concise, accurate, factual advice to your consumers and be able to establish a time frame. Like, we will be reporting out every 24 hours, or we will be using this outlet channel, be able to provide updates, monitor this Vex feed, or whatever it might be. That's why my clicker died. It wasn't a radius thing. Womp womp, I know, now I'm gonna have to go run eventually maybe. All right, it's day 7. We've been dealing with this crisis for a whole week. A clean patch is released by Mihai, and he also improves the security of his CI system. It locks some things down, changes some access controls, changes some accounts, and we're here in the recover phase. The vendor now must immediately start to ship the remediated software while handling customer churn and potential audits. So from this stage, I'll start with Megan. What updates are you making to your open source intake processes?
That's a great question, CRob. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. So changes to the open source ingestion process, probably taking a look at our release and testing process and seeing how much extensive testing we're doing on new versions before we're pushing them out to prod and to customers. Looking at our versioning and making a plan to see if there's an opportunity to do a rollback in the event something like this happens in the future. Cool stuff like that.
Excellent. Yessie, as the Chief Information Security Officer, how do you validate and roll out a patched version? And what types of long-term safeguards are you thinking about putting into place?
So I just remembered that we have an office of open source, so I could
she's played as well. Excellent job.
connect with her to figure out what we've learned, who we're talking to, figure out like where the damage is.
Yeah.
Talk with sales to make sure that now that we have, because Megan has confirmed that it's been patched across the ecosystem, make sure sales is now bringing in profit by telling people that we've fixed this thing and our product now does this amazing thing to eradicate this one vulnerability. Working with marketing and folks to write communications out to our customers, let Dear John know that the next version is available and it does patch this piece. And then working internally to write out our playbooks to not only just eradicate this one incident, but making sure that we're ready for the next time this log4j happens. We have SBOMs in place and we can easily triage our incident response to quickly identify where this was, because nobody slept for the last, what day is it?
Week.
Because we needed to figure out where this fluffer thing was in our ecosystem. Aww. And you know, we have been around for 25 years, so who knows in the wild, wild west where this came. So, but we found 80% of it, but we're not telling the media that. And we're working to see where the other 20% is hidden.
Excellent. So let's turn our attention to our poor, beleaguered, single maintainer, Mihai. Mihai, you have had several engineers from LargeCo offer to help. They've never engaged with the project. You've had a security researcher reach out. He has also offered some assistance. You've had, now you're up to 878 requests for a fix. You've had the media kind of dragging the good name of your project through the mud. What are you thinking, first off?
First, I would like to sleep, because in the past week I've been very stressed about all of these issues, all of the media reports, afraid that I might get arrested too, that people might ask me to pay for damages. And then I finally managed to find the reply from Seth in the spam folder, because it got directed there. I managed to find the PRs from the developers in the sea of requests to patch. I put the pieces together. I realized, okay, I see there is a path forward. I release the fix. Then I message Seth and the other developers on how I can improve this project. Maybe I also start Googling around or asking Deep Research and other LLMs to give me information. I found out about this awesome OpenSSF organization, and I start reading the materials from there. I see this securing critical repository was working group, and I start reading the working notes, and I make a note in my calendar to actually join the meetings, and then I sleep.
So from your perspective, so much of open source is based off of reputation and trust. How does this make you feel? How are you going to be able to restore trust from your user base?
I am a little bit hoping that the fact that this one got patched and I'm going to learn how to do it faster in the future is going to get the reputation back up in time. I remember reading about the exe incident, how the reputation went down, but several months after, the reputation of the project is still okay, and it's also still attached to the incident itself, but there are lessons learned that people now use for other projects such that this doesn't happen, but there is no more negativity against the exe developer, so I'm hoping that that will happen to me too.
Excellent, and I like the kind of optimism that's incarnate within the upstream open source. They're looking to help solve problems, and I think you're an optimist. Speaking of optimists, our poor friend John, who's had all this dumped on you and your business and your customers, from your perspective, first off, let's say, how do you feel about all this? What did you like? What didn't you like?
I am afraid, very, very afraid. I haven't updated the software to the latest version. This is the first time I did it in 3 years, because the version I was on 3 years ago, the value version, didn't have any new features I really wanted. And I couldn't afford to pay for the end-of-life extension because I'm buying the value version. So I updated. I really don't want to have to update the software again.
And from a customer perspective, what types of assurances do you need from large co going forward? Are you going to maybe rethink your upstream suppliers and your risk calculus?
Absolutely. And the first thing I would expect is free credit monitoring. And beyond that, I would expect...
I think you broke Yessie.
Easier upgrade path. It's a pain to upgrade from one version of the software to the next. If I'm going to keep using this and I have to keep patching it because of these security vulnerabilities, it has to be easier to do. Otherwise, I'll go find some other software to do the same thing.
So Seth, my curious explorer, how do you independently verify that that patch actually fixes the problem you discovered?
Yeah, so I've been working with Mihai for the past week. I've also not been sleeping, but not necessarily because of this incident, just all of them happening all at once. But so when the patch was created and all the changes were made to CI/CD, I was able to pull those, run them back through scanners, try to reproduce the issue, and was able to tell Mihai, okay, I think this looks good. Like, I think it's a good time to publish right now. And then also independently of that, I'm seeing, because this issue is an issue here, maybe I can start looking elsewhere for other issues, try to get proactive with it, because who knows, maybe there's a lot of this out there.
Any questions from the audience from our panelists here before we roll into lessons learned? All right, next slide, Dr. Wheeler. Thank you, sir. Our friend Honk, helpful as ever, they suggest think about defense in depth. Think about multiple layers of controls inside your CI system, inside your authentication, authorization, and whatnot, and also think about release integrity controls. From a supplier perspective, ongoing vendor risk reassessment. Oftentimes, software is only assessed at the initial procurement stage. You need to continually modify that. Have some type of program, use a risk-based approach to reevaluate things, both from large co, but also John. This is something you're really he got burned here and potentially lost some of his customers, and you need to understand that you need to be constantly monitoring upstream and your vendors. Community resilience. You know, Mihai was that single maintainer. He may or may not have ongoing assistance from the large co-engineers, but projects should be thinking about community resilience. What's your maintainer succession plan? How are you building your contributor ladder to have more maintainers that have more potentially security-related skills into your community? You need to think about maintainer support structures. All of us rely upon open source software, and the majority of the software is a single maintainer project. What are you doing to help support these people that are kind of giving off their creativity for you? And thinking about shared incident response playbooks. For very large projects, this is something that, like, for example, the Apache Foundation has a incident response plan. They have an incident response team within that foundation so that they kind of work collectively, kind of pulling the same way. It's very good. So, and again, if you have a supplier kind of maintainer relationship at an upstream level, think about firming up those bonds. Porco got burnt once. Maybe he has some skills that can help that project, but maybe he also wants to try to figure out how he can monitor better for changes that are going on upstream. And then also thinking about, this is where foundations or manufacturers come in. Think about funding efforts. How can we support these projects and to avoid these problems? Next slide, please. All right, we're going to do lessons learned and talk about some amazing resources. Next slide. So the top 10 principles of incident response. During the incident, you always want to make sure that there is some type of executive that is responsible for the plan. You want to be talking with a single voice. You want to have a single point of contact that all of the business, all media goes to, and that person will get the feedback from the internal departments, but ultimately it's that person or that person's office that manages the communication inside and out. It's key that you have a regular cadence of updates to keep your internal and external stakeholders prepared. And as was cited by our friend Daniel from the Market Surveillance Authority, there are oftentimes external entities that you need to think about during a cybersecurity incident. So be aware of what your obligations are and whom you might need to give some early warning on. And this absolutely feels like this falls into the exploited vulnerabilities and potentially a severe incident category. So you've got some interesting reporting obligations in the EU on this. Number 2, develop a taxonomy of risks, threats, and potential failure modes. We always encourage software engineers to go through threat modeling, kind of understanding how my software could be broken. It's critical for enterprises and organizations to do the same thing. You need to have a catalog of what we think, how we might get attacked, how our things might get broken, and what we need to do to react to that, and always think about things like fail safe, and if you're using secure by design principles, ideally you have these kind of options to be able to help protect your application and your customers. Well, and 3, develop an easy, accessible, quick response guides. This lends itself very well to playbooks and checklists. You want to checklist everything so that you know within the enterprise, we need to go through these steps in order and making sure that it's done, you validate it. And checklists and playbooks are the easiest way for operators that may not be a highly skilled CISO or a really talented OSPO person. It kind of just helps everybody understand what the plan is and how to react when it's their time to go. Establish processes for making major decisions. This is often a big problem within large organizations. You don't know who the decider is. Get that mapped out before. Normally, it's going to be somebody within your executive suite that has this decision. It could be some type of leader of communications or PR or a board representative. You need to make sure you know who that person is so that you can quickly get decisions. You want to make sure you're maintaining relationships with key external stakeholders, such as law enforcement. If LargeCo had decided to go down the prosecution path, oftentimes you'll need to talk with law enforcement and give them updates. You might have to invite them in so that they can help collect evidence and data for any potential legal actions. You want to make sure that you maintain SLAs and relationships with breach remediation providers and experts. There is a whole industry of people that do this for a living. Oftentimes, if your organization has cybersecurity insurance, you oftentimes might have a retainer to have these IR experts available to you. You might not have that, but you want to make sure that if that's something, a capability you think you need, plan for it before it happens. Thinking about your response plan, make sure it's documented. In this electronic world, it's really easy to lose power or to lose that PDF. I recommend you keep a hard copy of your call tree, who you need to get involved in an incident. Also keep hard copies of your IR plan and periodically print them out again as they get updated and changed with the lessons learned. You want to make sure that staff members all understand their roles and responsibilities. You don't want the junior, excited engineer making decisions, making changes on the fly without understanding the decisioning process and what the organization may or may not want to have happen. You want to make sure you identify individuals who are critical for incident response and ensure redundancy. You don't want to have a single point of failure of a key engineer that you need to solve these problems and they're on vacation, or they quit last week. So you want to make sure that you have 2, 3 people knowing the process is probably better. And then finally, train, practice, and run simulated breaches. Again, this is fun. We had a great laugh. I really appreciate our panel, and I'm going to ask them kind of any insights they might want to share. But doing this type of thing in a more serious bent will help your organization be prepared and be able to respond effectively and avoid reputation loss, damage to your customers, or potential financial or legal consequences. So panel, and I'll start again with my friend Megan, and we'll walk our way right. From your perspective, anything else you want to share?
Yes, I think this OSPO has learned a lot about supporting open source projects and maintainers directly, and also internally being able to say, oh wow, we have some products that are 100% dependent on open source projects, and they have SPOFs, so maybe we should support them. So we're going to work on that, and then also work better with the CISA, because we forgot about you too.
Seth, anything you want to share?
Yeah, so having successfully gone through this, now I have all of this knowledge about how all of these attackers are able to exploit CI/CD pipelines, and so now I'm able to go out to all these other projects and potentially help them proactively or find other indicators of compromise across different projects.
Excellent. Yesenia.
So I've moved on to the next fire, and the engineers that are complaining about doing security. But no, in all seriousness, like, really this is like a good point for an organization to reevaluate their open source, maybe get funding into the system, getting some security engineers to help our solo researchers and developers, and really put that into play, considering, what was it I just saw today, it was like 97, a couple years ago it was like 80% of open source is in our consumer products. So somebody from sales flashed me that number, and I was like, oh shit, and like, took that into consideration, because I'm about to go out to Bimini, and I don't want to be the government's knocking on my door saying they want to help me, but it's actually ISIS. So I'm like, all right, no, I can say I'm Cuban. But in all seriousness, this is fun. But no, seriously, security is important work. Thanks.
Thank you. John, any final thoughts you want to share?
So it turns out that I run a logistics company, and because logistics is so interesting, and Uber Drive was the only thing I could buy for that, the logistics I operate across the entire country, because we would, you would think have more than one system, but it's not that exciting, is for grocery stores. And we didn't realize that if the software went down or we were compromised, no one in the entire country would get any food, because the logistics systems to figure out where to deliver which pieces of food wouldn't be working. So maybe we need to learn from some of these other things, even though we don't produce or manage software.
Excellent. Excellent insight. And last but absolutely not least, Mihai, anything you want to share?
I just realized that even though my project has a large number of downloads and a large number of stars, those are not just vanity metrics. They should also be a signal that I should invest into security, that I should look into getting more maintainers, getting more people accustomed to the project, maybe found other groups that are working in the same area and get together, get to common practices together, or some organizations, some open source organizations that can help, not just be optimistic and hope that nothing bad will happen with my project.
All right. Dr. Wheeler, can I borrow your finger for a moment, sir? Honk says honk. Next slide, please. So we have a group dedicated to these, this interesting part of the software supply chain security story, the Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group. We were one of the oldest working groups in the foundation, and we have several resources that directly apply to what we just went through today. So first off, we have a tabletop exercise framework. So if you're interested in running your own tabletop exercise at your own organization or at your project, I have a template to help walk you through doing this. We have several coordinated vulnerability disclosure guides. We have a guide for open source maintainers and projects. So if you want to learn like good practices around CVD, having a security policy, having templates around these things, check out the CVD guide for projects. And then if you're a security researcher, we found that oftentimes security researchers also don't understand how open source works. So we tried to explain how researchers can proactively and effectively engage with upstream to get those desirable outcomes. Because generally, the security researchers, and I'd say the majority of the time, are just interested in trying to fix the problem, and they want to help. So we want to help them help our software friends. We have an amazing guide written by one of our panelists here, the Guide to Becoming a CNA, which is very often cited as a pretty great piece helping coach open source projects if they want to manage their vulnerability CVE experience, their vulnerability disclosure experience. So there's a guide to teach you how you can go and be a CNA and be able to manage your own destiny around vulns. Next slide. We have several future projects coming up. We're looking at writing a CVD guide for open source consumers, providing best practices for how downstream can get the most effective and beneficial experience engaging with upstream. We have, we're going to be working on tabletop in a box. So if somebody's interested in running something like this, you could just fork that project and away you go. You've got your own ability to run something like this yourself. You got to get your own jersey in hat though. We are looking at making incident response plan templates to be able to provide this for upstream projects, but also any kind of consumer. You could leverage these templates. And we're looking at making more IR playbooks and templates. Next slide, please. All right, and this is going to be a wrap. Thank you to my panelists. Let's give them all a warm round of applause. Also, Dr. Wheeler for his finger. If you haven't heard by now, there's a million ways to reach out and get a hold of us and get involved. We have working groups and projects. We have public meetings. We have Slack, GitHub. You don't have to be a paying member to participate in the community. Patches are always welcome. We want everybody to come in, whether you're a officially affiliated enterprise or not. And then we have a ton of mailing lists. So please consider monitoring us and participating and helping improve open source security for everybody. And one last slide, David.
If anyone's looking for a CISO, I'm not looking.
So thank you all. And I appreciate your audience for our indulgence. I appreciate our special guests and David.